Hey, what's going on, guys? UFC 258 just took place. Uh, Usman defeated Gilbert Burns by third round knockout. It was really a TKO. I'm talking little low. I'm a married father of four, so I want everybody to be sleeping. The older two are not really sleeping yet, but the younger two are sleeping, and my wife is sleeping. It was a good night of fights. What I want to discuss off the top is the fact that the UFC is robbing us blind, man. The UFC is robbing us blind. How can you justify charging us these raised rates for a pay-per-view that has Alexa Grasso versus Macy Barber as a second to last fight? You know, there were some good fights in the prelims. The first fight was really good with Marquez coming back over Mackie Patolo. But then the action kind of hit a lull. The two fights before Grasso versus Barber were just, yeah. I mean, even so, for some people, I was just looking at some reactions online. They ain't even like the Grasso versus Barber fight. And then you had the main event. I mean, not that, especially for his accomplishments, that Usman isn't worth watching. You know, sometimes the entertainment value for his fights is not always there. Sometimes the tactics that he employs are just not gonna get your average fan stoked. But in this fight, he just traded on the feet primarily. He and Gilbert Burns, as everybody knows, they were former training partners, and so he probably knew that maybe it's not wise if Gilbert's senses were with him to try to do too much grappling. That not that he definitely would be submitted, but the possibility for a loss would be there if he just went in and just tried to grapple with Gilbert like he grappled with Masvidal. The Masvidal fight wasn't nearly as impressive as this one, and I think that I like to see Usman in matchups where he just can't lean on his grappling, which is why after he wins the fight, he calls out Masvidal, and I'm already not liking what I'm seeing from the MMA community. I like most in the MMA community don't like the fight. Not because I'm against rematches, like, I'm about to make an argument that you all are not making, but a lot of times you are making this type of an argument. Many times when fighter A has beat fighter B, you guys never want to see the fight again. And you just, oh, we've seen that. I don't want to see that. And I have a problem when fighter B wins a couple fights, he's back on the run, and he becomes the number one contender, that people won't allow him to get the shot again. Even though the Tampa Bay Buccaneers destroyed the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, if Kansas City makes their way back to the Super Bowl and the Buccaneers make their way back to the Super Bowl, NFL fans can't say, oh, I don't want to see that fight. And then they say, oh, you know what? Yeah, we saw that last year and it was no good. So yeah, we're going to go with somebody else. I hate when MMA fans do that to fighters who work their way back. This is supposed to be a sport where, one loss won't define you. You're able to work your way back, just fighting getting back in line, fighting a bunch of tough guys, and then getting back at it. My issue is that Masvidal hasn't done anything since the loss. He's just sat around, and he's probably been waiting for this, hoping that Usman would call him back out So they can both, I understand it from a dollars and cents perspective, but he just hasn't done anything to earn a rematch. You shouldn't be able to sit back, lose, not take a fight, especially when you have it's not like there's not other viable guys. We know that Kobe Covington, after he beat up Tyron Woodley, the first name he called was Street Judas Masvidal. There's a storyline there. These guys used to be best friends and training partners, and then they felt betrayed by one another, and they just started taking barbs at one another. Kobe had to leave the gym because he don't know how to act, and there's a lot of storyline there. That's the fight that even Dana White himself says he's been trying to make. Um, Masvidal shouldn't be able to go ahead of Kobe and get the first crack at Usman if he was unwilling to accept the fight with Kobe. You know, and Dana told us that he's been trying to make that fight. So the fact that it's never been announced and never happened, you have to believe that Masvidal's team is delayed it and was probably hoping for this thing. I don't blame a guy like Masvidal. Automatically people will say he's afraid. He doesn't want to take that fight because he knows he'll lose or whatever the case is. I hate when fans disrespect these fighters, especially a guy like Masvidal. As much as I hate his politics, his name is Game Bread for a reason. This is a dude that used to street fight for probably a couple $100 in backyards in Miami. Unsanctioned fights. He's been fighting since he was like 19 years old. The guy's like 36 or something now. Don't tell me this guy is afraid. He's fought all kinds of guys, all shapes and sizes. Uh, the man is not afraid to take a fight. A sanctioned fight. That's what he's been doing his whole adult life. I find it just to be a ridiculous argument that the UFC uses to try to pressure their fighters into taking discount title shots, and I hate it because it stalls divisions. That we don't get the fights made the right way when we should get it. It's just terrible. I hate when fans do that. They allow the UFC to have this leverage, and it worked for some people. And because there's no union, there's no the fighters are not working together. You have this thing where fighters undercut other fighters. I believe, I don't have the proof, but I believe that Usman and Burns' manager, what's this guy's name now? Ali Abziz, whatever. I believe he gets his fighters these discount title shots. He's like out there undercutting people. So if somebody's asking for a $500,000, he'll come in with his guy who's got almost the same accolades, but it's not quite there yet, and say, "Oh, we'll take it for 250." Or he just undercutting, fighters. Helping the UFC to suppress wages, and I hate that. Um, but again, I don't want the Usman fight, Usman versus Masvidal fight, because Masvidal has not done anything to earn it. He hasn't gone out there and fought anyone since the loss. I mean, even if he didn't fight Kobe, if he did something where he realizes like that's a bad matchup for me, I want to try to get some momentum and make a name. If he went out there, if he had avenged the loss to Wonder Boy, if he had done something, if he had shown some interest in realizing that you need to kind of live in the real world, you can't come in off of a loss, even though obviously Dana wants to make the Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier fight the rematch, and if they do that, they're probably going to put the belt on the line. And I hate stuff like that. I agree with what Justin Gaethje said concerning that type of thing, where he's like, if that fight is made for the title, he doesn't want to fight in the UFC anymore. And I agree with that sentiment. But I don't agree. I don't think he should go into a title shot in his next fight either, because again, he's coming off a loss. If the UFC was wanting to make a title fight next at lightweight, considering Khabib retired and the title vacated. If they absolutely were going to go with that route, that the next fight is going to be for a title, there's only one matchup. There's only one. And I know people think that there's two matchups, two possible matchups, but in my estimation, there's only one. Dustin Poirier, number one contender. Charles Oliveira should be the number two contender. And those are my rankings. I don't want anybody coming in here and saying, hey, this person is ranked, whatever. So Charles Oliveira beat Ferguson in his last fight, who had lost his last fight to Justin Gaethje. Gaethje lost to Khabib. You know, when guys lose championship fights in my book, you know, they get dropped down. Even a champion. If a champion loses, they don't become the number one contender. Not in my rankings. I think that's wrong-headed. I mean, I think that you shouldn't set it up where a guy loses and he's now the number one contender, meaning that he only needs one fight potentially to get right back in there, especially depending on the way that you lose. I think that's wrong. Gaethje got dominated. He needs to go out and get at least one or two wins before we talk title shot. Give me a second. Cool. My wife. Sorry about that. So, what was I talking about? My idea for the lightweight belt, what they should do. I've been pushing this, and I put this out on my Twitter account, Sam MMA Fan Bronx. That's my Twitter handle. They should do an 8-man tournament. They should take pretty much the top 6, whoever the top 6 are. I mean, and in my rankings, I think I can probably spout it out by memory without going back to my feed. But like I mentioned, I believe that Poirier is number 1. Oliveira is number 2. I'll put Gaethje in the 3rd spot. 4th spot, I'll put RDA. 5th spot, I will put Conor. I believe I said Conor. 6th spot, Mike. No, maybe I put 5th spot. I put Mike Chandler. 6th spot, Conor. 7th spot, maybe I made Conor 7, which would make people irate. But at the end of the day, the matchups I had, the 4 matchups I thought would be good, is Poirier versus Nate Diaz. I put Nate Diaz in there at 8. Not that he's the 8th ranked lightweight. He hasn't fought in lightweight in ages. And I know, obviously, I'm living in a fantasy world because Nate Diaz seems to think that he can call out the hottest fighter, Oliveira or Poirier, but he wants to fight them at 170, weight classes that neither one of them has ever fought at. And at the same time, say 155 is lame. He owns that just crazy stuff. I mean, I'm a big fan of Nate Diaz, Nick and Nate Diaz, but man, just some crazy stuff. So you're calling out lightweights to come up to 170. It doesn't make any sense. But you're saying you don't want to go to 155. If what you're really saying is that you want to fight those guys, but you don't want to have to cut weight, I understand that. He's getting up there in age. Excuse me. He's like, I want to say he's 36. He's getting up there in age and might not want to cut. And maybe he's saying, maybe he would agree like, hey, I'll do this tournament thing. But I'm only cutting weight once we get to 155. And he can make the weight. He can make 155. And he, his measurables, he's a big 155er. And he probably does have an advantage fighting at 170. But if they're willing to do it, if Poirier is willing to do it, which I believe he said he is willing to do it, then so be it. Poirier and Nate fight, and then the winner of that fight take on. I want to believe I said RDA and McGregor, and I tried to set these things up with keeping in mind that RDA McGregor, that there's some history there. If they were the 4 and the 5, I'm trying to look at I'm gonna see if I can find it on my Twitter feed really quickly. I think I pinned it. Did I put who I put in the 4-5? I didn't actually. I put RDA and Chandler at 4-5, which is fine. That's a cool fight. I know it's not what Chandler wants as far as it's probably not as splashy as what he thought he was going to get. He's thinking Poirier. He was thinking short notice versus Oliveira. He was actually going to try to make weight and make a fight for this card. But Oliveira wisely said, no, I'm right here at the top. Why would I go on this crazy win streak and then just because the UFC realizes they booked a really thin card, why would I take a short notice fight, with all this momentum that I've built up? But they should book these fights, in my opinion, or something like that. Some iteration of this. Dustin Poirier versus Nate Diaz. That would be like a 1 versus 8. RDA versus Chandler 4-5 matchup, and then obviously the winners of those 2 bouts would face off in a semifinal. And then on the other side of the bracket of my imaginary bracket that I have here, I would put Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. That's what I put in there. I'm glad to put him in there. He's been looking really great lately. For a while I was down on him after he lost to Alex Hernandez by TKO, but I gotta get past that. He's been looking amazing in his last few fights. And then the winner of Oliveira Dariush would fight the winner of Conor McGregor and Justin Gaethje, and that's a cool matchup because obviously they have some history of just verbal sparring with one another. RDA versus McGregor would have been a cool matchup also because you all might remember that RDA had to pull out of Red Panty Night a couple years back, and he ended up dropping his title to Eddie Alvarez, and then Eddie Alvarez got Red Panty Night, and of course, that he earned that Red Panty Night because Conor McGregor whooped his ass. But but Gaethje. I'm trying to remember after what fight it was. But essentially, Gaethje just keeps it 100 as far as Conor McGregor is concerned. He calls him a shit human being. Said, hey, he's a great fighter, but he's a shit human being. Shit father, shit human being, shit husband, all that stuff. Because obviously we know that Conor McGregor, he's a philanderer. And and he doesn't always set, and he might possibly be a rapist. I don't know, but there's been more than one woman to allege such things or some kind of sexual assault. So obviously, Gaethje responds in kind to those things. So and Conor has viscerally responded back to him. So that would be a fiery matchup. And obviously, the winners of all those fights will fight each other, and then at the end, whoever comes out, which would put you on a bare minimum of 3-fight win streak, you would be the champion at that point. I would think you would be a deserved champion, even if you could never claim that you beat Khabib, and you might one of these guys who would emerge possibly lost to Khabib and were finished by Khabib. We know 3 of the guys on this list that I'm telling you to consider, actually 4, have fought and lost to Khabib. But that's okay. You can still say, you did something, especially if the UFC is able to do it in a year's time. You can say that, hey, you did something that Khabib never has done, never will be able to do, So there's some legitimacy there. But the idea that the UFC would just go on and just, just like they did at 135, just decide that, hey, Jose Aldo coming off of a loss to Marlon Moraes, but because we think he won, we'll put him in, and we'll just pick Peter Yan to fight him. And it's like, it was clear that Corey Sandhagen and Aljamain Sterling at the time, they were matched up and were just as deserving. In fact, they were both more deserving excuse me, than Jose Aldo to be. Um, what did I drink? But I had a tea. I don't know why I feel like some kind of congestion. Need to clear the throat. My apologies. But why they just it's like they just coronated Peter Yan based on beating Uriah Faber, the fight before he gets to fight Jose Aldo. How do you do that? How do you justify that? How does the UFC justify how they justify coronating him over Aljamain Sterling? And then when you actually look at what he did to win the belt versus what Aljo did, he went out there and had it was a good fight. It was a back and forth fight until he finished Jose. But if you look at what Aljamain had done a month earlier, he cut through Corey Sandhagen like a hot knife through butter. And we knew Sandhagen had this potential, but now in his last two fights, he has truly shown that that Aljamain win over him is aged like fine wine. He went out there and he real kick KOs Marlon Moraes, and then he just crucified freaking Frankie Edgar with that knee in like 28 seconds or something. I mean, beautiful flying knee. He like kind of led him into it, led him to the side he wanted to be on, and just just as Frankie's ducking down, it's like he almost like knew it was like baiting him to take this shot, and it was just a beautiful piece of violent artwork to see. Like I heard Phil the MMA dude and the Fight Geek talking about this on the Split Decision podcast about the fact that it was cooler, it was better than Masvidal's. They didn't. I would say it is, but what's cooler about it is that it's more technical artistry, and but maybe we come from a place where we really appreciate a beautiful technique that leads to a savage ending. But somebody who maybe is more raw and visceral, you'll never forget the moment when Masvidal is putting his hands behind his back and he's like playing possum. But then as soon as the fight starts, he just sprints at Askren and just flying knees and knocks him out in 5 seconds, and then follows up with these unnecessary shots. There's something about that you can make the argument. I would appreciate the argument where you said just the look of that, just the savagery, just the way this dude had to like literally be pulled off, like he didn't know that he had already knocked this guy out. Like he said, he's like I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm not like a Shevchenko. That's what he said about himself. Oh man, Masvidal. Why I used to love you, man. Why did you have to go down that freaking crazy conservative hole, man? These MMA fighters, they've been making it so hard to love them lately. Like all of them, man. My God, is there one of them out there that doesn't sound like a brainwashed bot? Like when I see the way these guys conduct themselves on social media, I'd be wondering if it's like they're all in the sunken place. how to lose fans in 15 tweets. I mean, that's what these guys. It's like Masvidal, even Chandler. Before he before he's ever even introduced to the UFC audience. He's talking about following him on Parler, just like out of nowhere. It's like, dude, what are y'all doing? Gina Carano the other day, man. I mean, Gina been asking for it for the longest time, man. And these conservatives that are doing her no favors, it's like it's so terrible to see what's happening to her. She blocked me on Twitter. Man, I feel like I don't say anything I don't mean, and I'm always trying to come with the best of intentions. But she was just doing all kind of stuff, just like sharing stuff. Maybe she's like President Trump. Like that was a retweet. I didn't say it myself. I just put it out there. It's like no, but if you retweet it, man, don't tell me retweets don't equal endorsements. Don't share trashy stuff with no context. If you're sharing something that's stupid or ridiculous, and you're just sharing to show how dumb somebody is, you need to put a quote atop it. You need to say, "Hey, man, look what this fool is saying." Put a frowning emoji or something. Don't just share some crazy stuff. You know, she did poking at the transgender community for the longest time. Just sharing a whole bunch of just silly conservative posts and stuff, like, just a lot of conspiracy theory stuff, stuff about not wearing masks and, caring about the economy over people's health and safety. It's like, when you're an actor, when you move past MMA, now you're an actor, especially either one, really. You should really try to stay out of politics, in my opinion. Unless if we know you for fighting or for acting, you should try to be as apolitical as possible. And I know that a lot of people will respond that the people on the left who have leftist views don't typically have to do that, right? I always see what's his name, Mark Ruffalo, the guy who played the Incredible Hulk for the Avengers. He's a leftist, he's always tweeting stuff, and he'll really get in trouble. But that's typically because uh, the opinions are just less odious. I mean, there's no both sides. The right is always trying to make a both sides type of thing, and what they end up doing is making a whole bunch of false equivalents. Gina got fired off of The Mandalorian and from Disney for saying that Republicans in the country are being treated the same way that Jews were being treated during the Holocaust or the lead up to the Holocaust, and it's just like, she, and again, it wasn't her post. She just shared it, but again, you can't just do that. It's like Savannah Guthrie told President Trump, you're the president of the United States, right? Essentially, you're a person with power and influence. You're not somebody's crazy uncle. You can't just go talking about, oh yeah, I was just sharing this with something to think about. You should have educated yourself, but before you put that on your if you shared it through Instagram or what. But yeah, so I saw Ariel Homwani had responded to what he felt about it. He put like an 8 minute or 8 minute and change response, and he just said he would like for her to educate herself, right? And he's a Jewish journalist. He's been covering the sport for over a decade. One of his first interviews that he did back when he was very green and new in the game was with Gina Carano, and just had this long running affinity for her because she gave him the time of day when he was getting his feet wet, before he could ever get credentials to cover the UFC and stuff like that. And so he always appreciated and remembered that. But he's a Jew. He's a Jewish journalist. He's a Jew. So it hit him close to home to see her sharing this crazy thing. He said, he had seen her sharing other stuff, and he was just saying to himself, like, man, why is nobody near her? Those people who are closest to her agent, somebody like, why don't they get a hold of her? Maybe, I don't know. But I feel like she's getting advice from bad people. People who have an agenda and don't care that her harmful rhetoric is going to get her cut off from the industry. I don't rejoice in the fact that they fired her. I just recognize that was going to happen. What would you do if you were running a business and somebody made odious comments about all these different communities who have either been oppressed in the past and there's always that fear of going back there, or communities that have always been like the transgender community, Black and brown people, all these communities, whether through systemic racism or obviously gender discrimination, all these different things. Uh, you know, that's punching down. Well, you should never do that. Right? And if you do that, and now people don't want to support a product because they don't want to see your face, now your employer is losing money because you wanted to go out here and not just be an actress. You wanted to go out here and not just be a fighter, right? You know, I've had that be the case, and with Gina, even though I would love to love her because I've been following her career for so long. But when I see her doing these odious things, it's like I stopped watching The Mandalorian after I realized that she was just being a goon, just being silly on the internet. How did I get on this topic? I was supposed to be talking about UFC 258. But again, I made all the points I want to make from UFC 258 to tell you the truth. Usman beats Burns. I didn't break it down much, but he beat him with some jabs. He started touching him. He got hurt in the first round, and it was looking really scary for him in the first round. But then Burns slipped after he hurt him a couple times on the feet in the first round. And Usman got to spend 2 minutes like hovering over Burns, and he got to collect his wit, and he just kicked him in the butt while Burns played this game as if like come down at your own peril type of a deal when Usman was hovering over him, and then he got back up, and he ended up in my estimation he won the first round. Second round they come out. You're thinking like, man, maybe Burns has an advantage when they're standing, and then they're exchanging blows, mostly missing. The next thing you know, Usman hits him with some solid jabs, and you would think that he just like caught him with like a counter right that he never saw coming, a head kick that he thought was going to his body and hit him in the head. And he did like the stanky leg that DC did at UFC 214 when Jones kicked him upside the head off of a jab. It's like, why are you hurt? Why are you hurt like that off of some jabs? I mean, I know some people have some real power jabs and stuff like that. Like, you have like kickboxers and boxers who have like specific techniques. It didn't look to be like some special thing. I mean, I've seen him throwing that same jab, hitting Masvidal with it, Covington and Woodley, and none of them had that kind of reaction. It might stop them in their tracks. But I mean, this dude was like ready to like go out off of some jabs. I thought he might be finishing round 2, and then round 3 comes out. He gets hit with another jab, and then he goes down, and he finishes him off with strikes. Herb Dean, man, Herb gonna Herb, man. He's been the most slippery ref in MMA for like the last 3 to 5 years, man. This dude he is just so indecisive. I mean, every time I see Herb in these spots, he's like, "Am I gonna in and out?" He's the same guy who the last show I saw him at, I felt like he must have taken like the last 2 UFC events off or something. But the last time I remember seeing him was the McGregor Poirier pay-per-view where who was getting tuned up? The girl. Why can't I remember? Everybody. What's her name? She's a fan favorite 115 pounder. She's like the Brazilian girl next door. Amanda Ribas. She was fighting Viviana Rodriguez, I want to say is the girl's name. And Ribas was like the favorite. What happens is that Ribas gets dropped. She gets tuned up on the feet in like the second round, and Herb gets so close, he's going in that the girl she realizes that Ribas is out, and so she like walks away thinking that Herb was stopping it, but Herb was like, no, I wasn't stopping. I was just getting close to see the action, but he comes in like so clumsily that he almost touches her, and just because he was like it looked like he was going to intervene, she just walks away. And then Herb looks and sees that Ribas like still kind of has something left, and he's telling her like, no, I didn't really stop. So the girl's just like, oh, okay, I'll come and I'll get this girl a second concussion if that's what you want, Herb. I mean, it's almost like Herb is like, no, finish him. Like, you can stop it early. You don't have, the girl was in a bad spot. She had got dropped. And she was in a very compromised position. Just call it. You could. I mean, I understand that he has had some times where guys like Robbie Lawler did him dirty, in my opinion. That Ben Askren fight, like he grabbed Robbie's hand when Ben had him in that bulldog choke, and Robbie just gonna let his hand drop like he's dead. And then he calls the fight like he should, and then Robbie pops right away. I you err on the side of caution. In my opinion, yeah, I wouldn't have apologized. I said, hey, I would have told Robbie like, hey man, uh, he got you in a choke. You have both of his hands. I'm here calling out instructions. I'm here grabbing your hand. If you let your hand drop like a dead man, don't pop up and make me look like a jerk. I would have been pissed off at Robbie Lawler if I was him. But I feel like ever since then, he's just been like really sketch on these stoppages, man. And this other instance I point out, I think was before that, but man, he let CB Dalloway over in like Russia or something. And this is a couple years back. He let him take an ungodly beating. I was like, bro, when are you gonna stop stop this fight? I mean, this dude was like out. I mean, I'm talking about the fighter. It was like a Russian fighter was on top of Dalloway, and he was just mollywopping this guy. And Herb is just standing there. I mean, it's like the end of the round and he can barely get himself to his corner. He just let him go back in his corner and come back out for another round. Herb been slipping, man. That's what I would say. Uh, so yeah, so Herb did that same thing with the Burns versus Usman fight tonight. He was kind of like Willie or won't he? Finally, he called it, and it was a good call. But I don't understand why Burns' chin is so suspect. In my opinion, he can crack. But if Gilbert Burns for Gilbert Burns, one of those guys would go out in the first round off of just a basic old punch. I mean, because man, it seems like he cracks really hard. Just I can tell from the Maya fight, the Woodley fight, and even this fight, he had his moment in that first round. But man, he just got touched with a couple jabs, and I mean, you would have thought that he had just been put through the ringer, like he had taken like 100 blows or something in the fight already. The way his body reacted, and so that was that. Uh, there's other fights. I'm sure some of the other great fans of the sport will discuss. I follow guys like Combat Sports with Rhino, my man Cyrus King, Split Decision Podcast, as I mentioned, Shots Fired, and the WOCast with Gina and Mike. And I'm a part of the MMA community. I call myself a casual because, man, I be looking on Twitter and I always feel like I never know what some of the other MMA accounts, the MMA Twitter accounts be talking about. I always like got to start asking around, like, wait, what are they talking about? So, like, I mean, you all, man, respect to y'all. Y'all go deep. Y'all know like every every single part of these people's lives, man. And to tell you the truth, I'm gonna stay casual because, like I mentioned earlier in the thing, the more you learn about some of these people, the less you like them. And I love the sport of MMA. I've always said that, like, for the most part, I'm more of a fan of the fights than I am a fan of any fighter now. And honestly, if I was a person who was just like the hugest stan for any one fighter in particular, I probably would have stopped watching the sport at some point because it's like, man, just when you think you like the guy, you realize, they got some just odious opinions that they just don't know, not that they shouldn't be just openly sharing and stuff. It's like, my God. So, yeah, that's that. It was a good night. It was an okay night. Again, my number one beef at the beginning that I pointed out is the UFC, ESPN, Disney, whoever, all of them ought to be ashamed of themselves. I remember Dana White saying this nonsense when they went exclusive, selling their pay-per-views through ESPN Plus. That we'll be able to control our prices. Like, so we'll be able to decide if we want to do something flexible with the prices. Why would you? Who in their right mind thinks that Kamaru Usman carries the name recognition, the star power of a Conor McGregor. Like, why would you put him on a thinner card, and charge and make us pay the same price for those group of fights as we pay for Conor McGregor and Poirier? Why would you do that? and then you got a card coming up. I think the next card coming up, you got 3 title fights. You got a champ versus champ fight. For the same price. I mean, I know I'm gonna make some fans mad here, but if I was gonna do it, I would say, hey man, Conor McGregor fights are $75. I don't care what else is on there. He's Conor McGregor. Same thing with Khabib. He's made it to that level. A champ versus champ fight like Izzy versus Blachowicz, that's 100, especially with 2 other championship. But I got to pay. I got to cut in all these champs on the pay-per-view. That's $100 card, and I would pay it. And I know the fans who do support these fights and actually pay for fights occasionally when you're not figuring out alternative ways to watch would pay for quality fights. Man, I started watching this sport back when you had these stacked pay-per-views, right? You didn't get them very often, but when you got them, man, the star power was from the beginning of the card to the end, And now it's just like they're just rushing them out. There's an event every week, and they're not always putting their best foot forward and just asking for the same price for cards that are up here, top notch, and cards that are subpar. And it ain't right. They're stealing money, man. And then on top of that, they ain't sharing fairly with their fighters. So those are my thoughts. I haven't got on here in quite a while, and this is a lengthy posting. I would like to get to the point where I speak, and when I do speak, I'm a little more short, and hopefully I can start doing this a little more frequently. But those are my thoughts. Again, follow me on Twitter. That's my main way of communicating. Sam MMA Fan Bronx on Twitter, and that's it. But thank you all for whoever watches this. Appreciate you. You can comment, subscribe, any of that stuff. Appreciate you.